What's up, everyone? This is Christian Duke. You're watching StrengthAddicts here on YouTube. I'm joined by IFBB Pro Vinny Galanti. We've been waiting for this for quite some time, so we're in for a treat. Vinny, how are you today?
Thanks so much, Christian, for having me on today. I appreciate it.
Absolutely, absolutely. So Vinny is someone that, everyone has heard of and everyone looks up to because of the fact
Thank
that,
you.
no, 100%, because of the fact that, we saw you in the magazines, we've seen you at shows, but I think what really resonates with a lot of people is that real bodybuilding heart and soul that you have, because your amateur career spanned quite some time and
It
you
did.
never gave up.
Well, things were different back in the 90s. Not to discredit anyone who's earned a pro card, today that has, guys in my era say, oh, you could lose a contest today and turn pro. It's just different qualifications. It's the way it works. It's a different business. And I always looked at bodybuilding as a business. I never questioned what the NPC or IFBB had in store for their business plan. A lot of competitors, and I'm sure you've heard it over the years, competitors complain a lot about not getting a good fair shake, or they get looked at or get overlooked and things like that. So I always looked at bodybuilding as a business. So when I trained for a contest, I used it as a business tool to move to the next level in the sense of magazine coverage or guest posing or anything like that. And we're going to dive into that because I know you want to talk about that.
I think, and I think it's very interesting too, because when you were competing, there was really just bodybuilding, maybe fitness, maybe figure, but now there's a lot more divisions. So, I'm sure also we'll talk about that in terms of coverage, because there's
Sure.
so many more divisions, so many more people now, and they all want to be recognized. So
Yeah.
When did you start competing? Like when was your very first show?
My very first, I grew up in Jersey City, New Jersey, and I would take the bus every day to go take karate. And it was 1983. I was about 16 years old. And I would go with my friend Dino and Ernie. Dino and I would go take karate classes. And literally one day, I walked out the door, and I can't believe I never saw it before this day. And it was a gym. I'm like, Dino, let's go check that out. And I walked into Billy's gym in Bayonne, New Jersey, and literally I was addicted the second I walked in the door. The smell of the iron and the sound of the weights. Guys don't understand that today, because I think 90% of the gyms have rubber weights, and you don't hear that sound. It's a different sound. And I was like every other kid. I was 16 years old, got into the gym, and in February of '84, which was only like maybe 4 or 5 months later, I entered my first contest. And I had no business being on stage. I was, not really, and had no background in training. It was only a couple of months. I just had this foundation, and if everybody, I don't know if a lot of people remember the name Len Boslin.
I heard the name.
So Len, he's an older, I actually think he just recently passed away. He was friends with Billy Schultz, who was the promoter of the contest. And Len had emceed a few of the Mr. Olympias, and he had this real deep voice, and he emceed the shows, the Mr. Hudson County. And I placed dead last. And for some reason, Len walked up to my father and I and said, "You're going to be a good light heavyweight one day. Don't give up. Don't quit. Continue." So I had guys like that right from the get-go. So that was kind of cool, I think Len, I could tell you a really cool story real quick.
Sure.
And Len told me that in the 50s, guys would only train for shows when they were training for a show. So the rest of the year, they had a different mindset than what we do today. And they thought they would get too bulky in a bad way. They looked at it as a bad thing. And they wouldn't touch a weight for months. And then they would train. So he told me, he said, yeah. So it's kind of crazy, right? You would never think that. So he told me, he said, "Oh, when I trained for the 1955 Mr. America, Mr. New Jersey, I'm sorry, the 1955 Mr. New Jersey, I said he goes, I'm going to train differently. I'm going to train all year. And my training partner tried to talk me out of it. And he and I both trained for the first, nobody ever did it. And they all thought we were nuts. And he ended up winning the Mr. New Jersey in 1955. And, you know, that was guys like that have been in my life, my whole career.
That's amazing. And I was just, I mean, that's a big title, you know, especially even today, because, you know, there's something about that area, New Jersey, New York, Connecticut, right there. Like that's so hardcore bodybuilding. But when you said
back in the 90s,
wow.
Yeah, and back in the 90s, New Jersey and New York were very competitive against each other. New Jersey guys didn't like New York guys, and vice versa. And you know, before Steve Weinberger was the chairman, I can't remember the chairman at the time before Steve, but yeah, there was a lot of animosity between the competitors. It was cool. There were fist fights, things that you don't see today at shows. Way different mentality. And, you know, it's something that I'll cherish the rest of my life. I know people listen to this like, wow, fist fight at a show. Yeah, shit went down sometimes at a show if the judging was off, or a competitor thought it was off. You had chairs flying around sometimes. Late 80s, early 90s was a different breed of competitors.
Oh, I could totally see that. I could totally see that. And I could see a lot of, and he'll appreciate it because we're friends, but I could see a lot of Mighty Mike Quinn's, you know, competing, you know, with that kind of.
Oh my God, yeah. Mike Quinn, his reputation lives up to, he's one of the best guys I've known in the sport. I actually had a chance to work with Mike Quinn years ago when Tom Platz took over for the WWE for the new federation that Vince McMahon was starting.
Right.
And I got to be a model on set, and I got to see Mike Quinn train a lot and hang out with him. So I got to know him. He was a pretty cool dude.
Yeah, there's a lot of, he was pretty tough. He is still pretty tough. What am I saying? But some of the other guys too, I'm sure you probably knew Matarazzo and Demayo.
Yeah, I got a great Paul Demayo story for you if you want to add that in later on or now or whatever.
Of course, that you don't even have to ask. Of course, I would
love
to hear.
So let me segue into it like this.
Okay.
So the whole purpose of you and I talking today are like how, you know, people are interested in how I got into the magazines back in the 90s, right? All right. So looking at bodybuilding as a business inspired me to try to get into the magazines. How could I get into the magazines? So 1992, I win my weight class at the New Jersey State Championships. And a week later, I go to California and I compete in the Junior USA. And at the Junior USA, and awesomely enough, I win my weight class at my first national title. I win my class. And I just walked up to photographers at the show and introduced myself. And just really just wanted to make, you know, give a handshake and have an eye connection kind of thing. Like, I didn't know where it was going to go or where it would lead, but I just wanted to make an introduction. And
I was just going to say that's pretty big leagues, Vinny, because most even today, I mean, most competitors don't make that introduction to the photographer. That's really pretty big leagues.
Well, I learned from my father. My father he owned a cab company for over 30 years, and he said, if you're going to do this bodybuilding thing, make a business out of it. And so that's how I approached it. And so, make a long story short, I guest posed. I think I guest posed shortly after that at a show that Shawn Ray was at, and I had literally maybe 2 minutes to talk to him because he was in a rush after he guest posed, he wanted to get his table set up to sell his pictures. And I was like, what do I do, Shawn? How do I get the photographers and the magazines to know me? And he said, open up every magazine that you see, and every magazine that you open up, and every name that you see in the magazine, from the editor to the publisher, whoever you see, write to them, put a package of pictures together. And that's what I did. And I did it all year long. I just kept sending a letter like, hey, my name is Vinny Galanti. I'm the Junior USA champion. Blah, blah, blah. I don't remember the whole thing, but I did that.
Yeah, but that blah 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 is great, man. Because if you don't mind, I gotta jump in. You're marketing the title that you won, and I always tell people, even especially bodybuilders, because you don't earn a pro card at Junior USA's or Junior Nationals, but that title has so many bragging rights, or like the Team Nationals champion too. That's a big title. So I mean, I think, and I just got to say, you writing to all these folks. By the way, that was great advice by Shawn Ray. But you writing to all these folks, putting your name out there, putting your title out there, that's big league stuff. I mean, that's what people do for supplement companies. I've never heard of anybody doing that for media. And the last thing I'll say, if you get the media, you get the supplement deal. It's all.
Yes and no. I mean, yeah, and that's exactly how it happened to me leading into when I worked for Universal Nutrition. I'll get to that in a second.
Okay.
So all year I'm writing to all these magazines, and I don't hear back from anybody. Nobody's contacting me. And Shawn told me, he goes, don't expect anything. Don't expect them to contact you. All you're doing is laying the groundwork for that what if day. When that what if day comes, be ready for it. And that's the way I looked at it. Because it was kind of hard, a guy from Jersey getting work from the photographers in California. And back then it was a lot different because you can set up a photo shoot and they would sell the pictures to the magazine. It's not like today where people brag that they're doing photo shoots and post it up on Instagram when they're paying $2,000 out of their pocket. That's not a real photo shoot. A real photo shoot is when a magazine contacts you. So before I get off track there. A buddy of mine, Chris Barron, and I go out to the USA's a week before. And we did things that week, a week before the USA, a year later, 1993 now. We did things that I would never do today. We drove around California, hung out. We were on the beach all day. We had fun. And I ended up winning the USA that year. I won my weight class. And met a lot of people. And winning the show, all of a sudden, now all the photographers that I wrote to was like, this is this knucklehead from Jersey that's been writing to us. And I had photo shoots lined up from Sunday morning all the way through Thursday. Every day, all day long, from 6 o'clock in the morning to literally like 7 o'clock at night. I was drained by the time that week was over. I couldn't wait for the photo shoots to be over. It was like I wanted it, and then I was like, please. I was praying that I couldn't wait for the day to be over because it was so long. But I got what I wanted.
And probably, sorry, and you probably kept your, I don't know if you kept your peak, but you probably stayed pretty stage ready during that whole time so you could take the best photos, right?
Well, then I learned from Chris Cormier, do your photo shoots before the shows. Come out here before the shows. So that was kind of a good tip from him. And we became buddies, on stage that day. That was great, competing, standing next to Chris Cormier at the USA. But backtrack a couple of days to my famous Paul Demayo story. So my buddy and I, Chris, were in the posing room at Gold's Gym in Venice. I think Lee Priest was in the room also. I can't remember, but I think he was. A knock comes at the door. And now you had to sign a sheet at the front desk to get your slot time to use the room. So I had registered for my room, the time to use the posing room, and I hear this knock on the door, and it's Paul Demayo. He's like, it's my room, get out. I'm like, what are you talking about? I got my time slot. He goes, get the fuck out. And he was all just aggravated and agitated right from the get-go. I'm like, Paul, and we kind of knew each other, but he didn't give a shit. And next thing I know, we're like kind of scrapping it out in the middle of Gold's Gym. And I don't remember who did it. I think Paul Dillet and I think Mike Matarazzo. I think it was Mike Matarazzo because it happened so fast. They break us up. And that we almost had a fist fight over the posing room. Me and Paul Demayo. Yeah, so it was kind of crazy. That's that's kind of the way it was back in the 90s.
Right.
And then we see each other backstage, and we were cool with each other. We were always cool. He laughed at it later on. I laughed. That's the way we rolled back then. Like, we just laughed. It wasn't a big deal. Nobody hated each other. It was just, I think tensions were high, and everybody wanted to get a pro card. I mean, you only had one pro card. That was just one guy. That was it. Chris Cormier turned pro, and nobody else did.
Yeah.
Today is like 60. Crazy, right?
Yeah, I mean, and that's one of the things about USA's, because USA's was only first. I think later it was first and second, but like nationals, the winner of every class gets a pro card. I think Universe is. I think Universe back in the day too. If you won your class, it wasn't enough. You had to win everything. So that's
correct, right? Yeah, always your first place got a pro card, and that was it. That was it. And so what I did was, after the USA, I just made sure that I kept in touch with the photographers. And when I got back home, from 93, end of 93 through probably 2000, I was in magazines all the time, on covers and stuff. So it was kind of cool. I did all that legwork, and I got a chance to work with Monica Brant. And she taught me a lot about business. I would watch her have 2-hour lines for people to sign autographs with her. So I learned a lot from Shawn Ray, Monica Brant on the business end of bodybuilding, on how to market and all that stuff. And I was fortunate. I had a short, small contract for a year with EAS, with Bill Phillips. And then I went to, on just a whim, I just picked up the phone and called Universal Nutrition. They're here in New Jersey. And I called them up and I said, I'm interested in being an athlete with you guys. I'd like to be a sponsored athlete. Can I come down and talk to you? That was it. That's all it took, was a phone call. Mm-hmm. If you don't try, you'll never know. And they said, sure, come on down. And I went down there thinking, I know exactly what I'm going to say to them. And when I got there and I talked to them, I said, everybody wants to be Dorian Yates, because he was Mr. Olympia at the time. Mm-hmm. So everybody wants to be Dorian Yates, but they can't relate to him. They can relate to me. And I can't believe I even said that. And they were like, okay. And they gave me a contract. I was like, oh shit. And then 18 years later, I'm with Universal for 18 years. I had a great career. I traveled the world. And again, magazine covers and just being featured in the magazine. And the other thing too is, I was never scared to fail. I never went into, but at the time, the North American Championships on a scale was the Nationals, the USA, the North American. And I looked at my physique as I want to be the top at the echelon of the sport. So if I can't win at the Nationals, because that was the mindset back in Jersey. We had, today it's called the Kemper Classic. And back in the day, it was called the Suburban Bodybuilding Championships. And you would win this amazing trophy called the Beast of the East. And guys in Jersey, like, you'd have bragging rights about how many Beasts of the East did you win. And no, this is that's the way we looked at things. It was an honor to win the Suburban. You were like royalty if you walked into Diamond Gym and you were the Suburban Bodybuilding Champion. It's not like that today. Different. Guys brag about being a 3 to 5 time nationally qualified competitor. If this was 1999, you'd be laughed at. You're bragging. You're bragging that you took 3rd or 2nd in a show that is only, you're just. But then when you get to the nationals, you can't even crack the top 10. Like, the mindset was different, and it's way different today. I don't think I would do anything different than these guys are doing today as far as marketing goes. It's a different world today. You can't contact a photographer like you did 15 years ago, 20 years ago. It's not going to happen. You're not calling somebody up.
Yeah, and I think too, like you said, it's a different world, because even today, like, well, now there's only Muscular Development, which is a great magazine. Steve Bleckman is, he's 100% committed to print, and their issues are
Yeah.
growing again, which is great. Ron is doing a fantastic job, but back in the day, like you said, a real photo shoot is where the photographer pays the athlete. And today, if you land the cover of a magazine, it doesn't really mean what it used to mean, because now I don't know that you get a big chunk of money, or I don't know how it works now, but it's not how it used to be.
Yeah, I don't remember what I got. I think I got like $1,000 to $2,000 depending upon the magazine. So I didn't do it for the money. You did it to parlay it into something else, because it was like every time I got into I did this every single time. And if there's guys listening to this, because I don't see a lot of guest posers today. I don't see shows with I don't know. Like, I would take a magazine, I'd go to Kinko's or Staples, and I would photocopy everything, make it professional, and then I would look in the NBC list and see all the promoters. And I always had like a mindset of like, okay, I'm going to invest I'm going to invest $300 on mailing out X amount to the top shows around the country, and just tell them, hey, listen, I took third in the nationals last year. Here's the latest magazine coverage I'm in. I'd love to be at your booth, at a table at your show, and guest pose. I would send them out to maybe, I don't know, 50 to 100 promoters around the country. And I'd maybe hear back from 10, and I'd maybe land, realistically, 3. Every year I'd get somebody new.
Yeah.
But then again, I would go and I'd make sure that I put on an amazing posing routine. And then from that, it would parlay into another guest posing from another promoter that was at the show.
Right.
For a few years, I guest posed in Alabama, like 4 or 5 years in a row. I did this. I almost did the circuit of all of the promoters. They just kept hiring me. And I put out a good product. I think a lot of people today don't understand that their physique is their product. They look at likes and followers and just settle on that. Like that's bragging rights.
Right.
No. If I can't win a title, then why? Like, how can I put this? Like, there are guys in our industry for years that have been just nothing but guys who promoted themselves, and they've done a fantastic job at it. And they've parlayed that into bigger stuff with movie roles, mainstream stuff. Like Mike O'Hearn, fantastic at marketing himself. He's one of the best. I watch Mike. I watch him. I think Mike's one of the best guys in the sport. He's done a lot of amazing things. He's the real deal. But he doesn't step on stage. He has in the past, but he doesn't step on stage today. And there's nothing wrong about not stepping on stage. But if you're going to market yourself, at least, in my opinion, back it up. I mean, Mike O'Hearn backs it up, right? Because he knows the system. He knows the business. But then there's other guys who just market themselves and think they're great, but they got nothing to back it up. So I always looked at it as, yeah, I want to get into the magazines, but I also want to win titles. Over my career, I've won 4 national titles, and I didn't do so great as a pro, because when I finally did turn pro, it took me 16 years to turn pro. I think, I could have went to college 4 times, I could have 4 different degrees, all the money I've invested in shows. But, and not to mock it, I'm not just trying to mock anybody. I'm not doing that. I think that our sport is so saturated today, it's very difficult to do what I did in the 90s today. Not to say it can't be done, but I think it's difficult.
Talk to us about 2 quick things, if possible. The first thing I think is of course, that I'd like to ask you about is the mentality in Jersey. Like when you went to Universal and you said people can't relate to Dorian Yates, they can relate to me, and how you said how you were fearless in that regard. You said what you felt. I feel like there's something about that area. I mean, I look at Big Steve or Maz or even some of the current pros. There's something about that tri-state area mentality that's just, I don't know how to explain it. It's old school, it's hardcore. So there's that. And also, if you could talk, and actually before that, what you're saying about everything, I think can be summed up as big picture. Guest posings, magazines, winning shows. It's all big pictures. I think that's great. But if you could talk a little bit about that Jersey mentality, tri-state mentality, but also something that you just recently posted on social media, that you use your guest posing opportunities as a way to get feedback from the judges on how you're posing. I think that's brilliant. And I've never heard anybody ever say that.
Well, so I know I got a few people who actually messaged me on that. Like, why would you ever ask a judge at guest posing? And one of the guys who asked me was an actual judge, and he was kind of condescending when he was talking to me online. And I was really surprised at that. So you have to understand, there's a fine line between kissing ass and getting actual feedback and letting them know you're serious. Because the top people in the industry, they get so many people smothering them where they probably don't want to hear, like, from so many competitors reach out to top people that are in the sport. And, you got to have a fine line in, like, respecting them and just, like, giving them their space, because their job is hard enough as it is. And I've always known that and always looked at it that way. So when I say, hey, critique my physique, you have to understand, like, when I retired in 2013, I was at my worst, all-time worst. And so after that, I thought I'd never compete again. And then I had huge setbacks with 2 rotator cuff surgeries. In my right shoulder, I have 9 screws, and in my left shoulder, I have 5 screws. So it took me like 3 years just to recover from all of that and start competing again. So when I competed in 17, I took dead last in the Masters Baltimore Pro. I took dead last in 2018 Masters Baltimore Pro. And then I just put the blinders on for Pittsburgh last year, and I came out winning the over 50 and the over 40. But I did a few, two titles in one night. So, but I did a few guest posings before that, and I went to the guys that have known my physique, and I wanted to know, am I on track to look like the old Vinny Galanti? And I got feedback where some guys were like, hey, your waist needs to come down a little bit. Hey, your rear delts need to come out a little bit. And I worked on those things. I take to heart what the judges say. I always have. If a judge said to me, you were off, I was off, and I had to come back harder. I always looked at it as, this is a time for me to make a connection with everybody in the industry. I don't think there are people who don't like me, and there are people who love me. You're going to get that. And I don't really care about the people who don't.
I don't know anybody that doesn't like you, but if you say so.
Well, no, there are. I know there are, but that's fine. I don't focus on that. I just look at it as a business. So that part of me asking a judge for feedback at a guest posing is just part of how I operate. I'm not better than anybody. I put my pants on the same way every day, one leg at a time. And I just, I think last year and the year before, when I was coming back, I asked so many people for advice. I think it tainted my rep a little bit in the local area, that people thought I didn't have my shit together and that I lost my confidence. And it wasn't that. It was like, I want to get back into the mix of things. I want to know, what are guys doing today? What are their training programs? What's out there? Because at 51, 52, it was difficult for me to come back, not only from the surgeries, but at this age where I had to change my training 100%. I had to do everything differently. And training for the show last year, it was way different than I ever trained for any other show. And it's challenging when you're older. You're like, man, this is not happening the way it used to happen. It's not working. But no, just to get back to guest posings, it was really just to get feedback and to challenge myself to be better, because nobody was giving me an honest opinion. No, everyone, either they were stroking me, saying I was fantastic, which I knew I wasn't, or they wouldn't say anything. So I wanted a judge who would not lie to me.
Yeah, no, and that makes perfect sense. And going back to that Jersey mentality, tri-state area mentality, like, Like, again, it does sound very hardcore, and it almost sounds like when you were saying, because when you were saying that you were asking everybody for feedback, I think that's great, because you're they're being realistic with you. But it almost sounds like maybe back home or in the Jersey area, like there, it's like maybe they saw that as a weakness. I don't think it's a weakness personally, but maybe that hardcore where you just keep going. You don't. I mean, how would you describe the mindset there? Because I don't think that mindset's really changed over the last 20 or 30. I don't think it's ever going to change.
I tell you a funny story, and it still applies today. This is a lesson I learned, and I learned it the hard way. This was probably, I don't know, somewhere in the 90s. I was guest posing at the Southern States for Peter Potter. And just before I left for the contest, I don't know if you remember the name Kenny Castle, but he's no longer with us. He passed away. He owned an agency, and he was involved with a lot of the female physique competitors. He was a great guy.
I'm friends with Bob Bonham, and Bob has actually mentioned that name, so I know who that is. Yeah.
Yeah. So Kenny was a great guy, and Kenny got me a lot of commercial work. He usually 99% of his business was work with women, and anything that came for a guy, he would throw my way. So I got a lot of work in print ads and stuff through Kenny. And so Kenny set it up where I got a commercial for Twin Labs. And so now I go to Florida, and Gerard Dente is there, and we're sitting having lunch. Now, Gerard Dente was the athlete for Twin Labs. And I was with nobody at the time. I didn't have a contract with anybody. I had no experience, nothing. And I just thought, oh, Gerard's going to be so happy because he's with Twin Labs and I'm going to be in a commercial. And Gerard just smiled at me. Oh, that's great, Vin. I got back on Monday. Kenny Castle calls me up. Vin, Gerard Dente's got the commercial. I'm like, well, what happened? What do you mean? Well, you told him. And he called and said, I should be the athlete in the commercial. I should be in the commercials. I'm the athlete. And it made sense. I learned the hard way. And that's the way we are here in Jersey. I don't tell anybody what I'm doing. A lot of us, I think, lie to each other or don't say anything to each other about what our next moves are. That's the way it is. You ask somebody about, hey, what are you doing for the contest? They're completely lying to you. That's the way everybody is. There's an edge to everybody here in a good way. Craig Richardson, Robbie Lopez, these are guys, to name just a few. Guy Ducasey, guys that were in the area that brought the best out of everybody. Where we were cutthroat, we wanted to, beat each other. And I don't, and even guys in New York, I can't think of Rob Russo, Johnny Moya. Those guys brought the best out of all of us. All of us brought the best out of all of us. These were, going back in the 90s, I mean, it was just awesome. I don't see the energy going into the local shows anymore. Guys want to be Mr. Olympia, right? Like, I want to be it. I want to be, I'm training for my pro card. Like, you've only done one contest. What are you talking about? Right. And a lot of the physiques today don't have the foundation of the years of training. They don't have that foundation where we had that foundation, where we were, when I won the USA, I had probably 10 years of basic compound work with all of the basics. And you're getting guys who start training today and in a year from now turning pro, and then they're stepping on the Olympia stage. And if they stick with it, maybe in 10 years from now, they're going to have a different physique. But it's rushed today. People want it yesterday. It's too quick today. I don't see, very impatient. And we didn't have names for things. Like, we didn't have fasted cardio. We just got up in the fucking morning and did cardio. That was it. It was no thing. There was no peak week. And peak week is completely overrated. I'm going to go on record. I'm going to say this. If your coach tells you you're going to have a peak week, fire him or her. There is no such thing as a peak week, because if you're behind schedule and you got to make up at the end, you didn't do your homework and you cheated on your diet and your coach wasn't hard on you. If you are ready to go on Sunday before the show, coast into the contest. There's no peak week. There's no manipulating sodium. There's no manipulating water. There's no carb depleting. Ride it in. When you saw me in Pittsburgh, I remember Marlon Belletros from Diamond Gym. He was backstage, and we were talking, and he said, "You look better than you did last week when I saw you. What did you do?" I go, "Nothing." He goes, "What do you mean?" He goes, "When did you cut your water?" I go, "I didn't. I drank 2 gallons last night." He's like, "What?" I'm like, "Yeah, I drank 2 gallons of water yesterday." As a matter of fact, I had to eat 4 more meals leading into the prejudging because my metabolism was running. And I think because the nerves kicked in, my metabolism started kicking in a little bit more. So I had to keep eating. I ate like 4 meals between 11 o'clock and 5 o'clock in the morning, just before prejudging. So I don't think that, and I go on record saying that if any coach wants to dispute it, go ahead.
No, but
I don't give a shit.
But it's interesting because I've actually heard that from the guys from your era, in the interviews. Like I think I just recently saw one from Rich Gaspari, and he said practically the same thing you just said. I think it's more a thing of the times now where that last week everybody's just destroying themselves when reality, like you said, you just coast in.
Yeah. Well, a coach has to sell something. Okay? A coach has to sell something. Point in case, Frankie Ruggiero, a client of mine. A couple of years ago, I was dealing with a lot of clients who were putting a lot of pressure on me that they wanted peak weeks, they wanted all this stuff, and I was getting rattled. I was like, I messed up a lot, and I fell prey to that, and I changed things, and I learned from that. And I said to Frankie, Frankie, this was like a year ago, 2 years ago, I said, listen, right now it looks like you're on course to be ready for the contest without any changes. Next week, please trust me when I tell you, if I tell you, we're not doing anything different. And we might just walk into the contest as is. He says, Vin, I give you 100% trust. You've been my coach. And when it got to Monday, I looked at him. I said, there's no carb depleting. Frankie, you're ready right now. Let me see you on Wednesday night. So on Wednesday night, I think I threw a cheeseburger in there because his metabolism was cranking. And that's another thing with cheat meals and refeed meals and all of that stuff. And no days off. I think this generation is completely fucking confused on what all of that means. And if you want, I'll talk about it. But basically, it's just a matter of having confidence and knowing what you're doing when you take that chance in wanting to be 10% better on Saturday morning. If you're looking phenomenal on Monday and you want to look 10% better for Saturday, there's a huge chance that you're going to look 20 to 30% worse on Saturday if you tinker with anything. There's no need for it. I know the big question is like, how come the guys in the 90s were drier or harder looking or had that look? Because we got in shape at around 3 to 4 weeks out, and we had the ability to eat into a contest. Guys today are waiting until the last minute. They're I don't know. I don't want to rag.
No, and actually, we should probably do a second or third interview because, like, we're, but this is gold. It's so important. And one of the things that Gary talks about, Gary Udit, NPC Mid-Atlantic Zone chairman and promoter of the North Americans and Team Collegiate Masters Nationals, one of the things that he says at the seminars that we do always is actually after the show, because you've got everybody from the bikini competitors to the bodybuilders. It's like some of them could potentially wind up in the ER because they eat so much food. They have no control. And, so that's the other side of it, but that's also just as bad.
Yeah. I've had, competitors saying, I want a reverse diet after the contest. And I'm like, a reverse diet? Just don't shovel crap in your mouth after the show is over. And if you don't have common sense on how to eat properly after the contest is over, then I taught you nothing the last 12 weeks. A lot of these people today need a coach because it's cool to have a coach. I'm on some team. Here's a true story. I'm in the room at the Pittsburgh Pro North American last year, and they had these round tables, and everybody sat at them, and they could eat their food with the microwave room. And I'm listening to 2 guys talk about their coach. 2 separate guys, 2 separate coaches. And both of them were talking to each other saying, neither one of them actually listened to their coach. They just wanted to be on the team so they can get publicity. And I'm like, do you know how many people do that where they don't actually listen to their coach? Why would I trust my coach with my physique? Why would I? You just spent X amount of money just so you could just be a part of something.
That's crazy. And
Thank you
for not saying what team that was. I don't want to know. That's insane.
No, I didn't even know what team it was. I
Okay.
don't know what team it was. But it happens more and more in the sport. And coaches, you know, when I ask anybody that I train, and competitors, you should hear this, really. When a coach asks you, what did you do? And you lie to them, it's only making the coach think what they're looking at is the program they gave you. And when it backfires and you have the balls to blame your coach, you got to do some soul searching, because this is the wrong sport for you. You're not being honest, not only with yourself, but with the person that you're paying. If you're going to pay top dollar for a coach, listen to the coach. I've done it. I've lied to coaches in the past because of good reasons, right? But now here I am, I'm 53. I got a lot of experience, and I probably, if the only thing I could ever do, go back, is probably not lie to a coach. That's probably what I would do. But the lies that I told the coach was maybe like if I didn't have a bagel on Sunday or something like that, it was like one little thing. But I like bagels. That's my downfall. So I think, like, you know, a lot of competitors today just need to be honest all around, and they're not going to get scolded. I think it's a different mindset too, because back in the 90s, you can, all right, you mentioned Maz. Maz was my coach for many years. And that guy has the best eye in the sport. And there's no doubt, no reason why, that's the reason why he's judging the top shows, because he knows what he's looking at. He could look at me and go, or Robbie Lopez or Craig Richardson, and go, all right, another 3 days of zero carbs. And we look at him like, what? He would make us suffer to get into the condition. I hear guys today say, hey, this is the easiest prep ever. I didn't suffer. Yeah, I'm gonna beat you. That's what it's boiled down to. You didn't suffer, I'm gonna beat you. The story. There would be times when I'd walk into the gym and pose, and I knew I looked great, and Maz would convince me otherwise. You look like shit. You need to get in better shape. You're gonna get your ass smoked at the nationals. Let's go, kick it into gear. I'm like, oh my God, man, I gotta get my shit together. When there was nothing wrong. But he didn't make us slack. There was no point in time that any of the guys that walked into Bodyworks ever slacked. And if we did, we got our asses reamed out for it. And that's today, these guys can't handle that. These guys can't handle getting almost borderline abused. And it's the generation we live in too, where if Maz ever talked to the guys today the way he talked to us back between 94 and 2000 when I worked with him, the guys would crumble today. I think we're tough because we had tough coaches, and Maz was a tough coach. And if it wasn't for Maz being as hard and as strict as he was, I probably wouldn't have done as well or as anywhere close to being as good as I was, because he brought he almost put a chip on your shoulder that he wanted you to get angry and pissed off, so that way you wouldn't cheat on your diet and you wouldn't have bad workouts. He took the chance in you being pissed off at him. He didn't care about that, and he had a good disposition about that. And I'll tell you right now, if he ever was a coach again, that's the first person I go back to.
And that's
one of the best coaches, better than the top coaches out there, because he brought a side out in you that wouldn't have been there. And he knew how to fuck with you, and he knew how to bring you back down. And you laugh, but it's true. It's like Vinny Galanti wouldn't be Vinny Galanti if it wasn't for Maz Ali. Robbie Lopez, he was top 2 in the USA. Craig Richardson, many pro shows he won and won the nationals. we all battled it out. We were in the same gym training together.
And I got to say that is truly, I think, the sign of a great coach, because, the reason I was smiling too, like when you said if he were to do that to folks today, they would crumble. A coach doesn't want to lose the business. So if they
too much appeasing.
Right. But the thing is, a good coach, though, doesn't care about that as long as the competitor looks their best on stage. That's really what a good coach does. And that's, again, like, you saying that about him is the best testimonial anybody ever could,
Yeah, well, he had the ability to know where there was a fine line. There was a fine line in all of that, where he knew to push it to a certain point and, also pull back. So it wasn't like, when I say the word abuse, it wasn't abuse. It was, right. He was bringing out the best in everybody.
But it would be considered abuse by some of the softer
100%
people
100%.
today.
Yeah, guys couldn't handle it. There's no way.
So we've got to do another interview, because we're almost at the hour mark here, almost 50 minutes hour mark. But we're definitely going to do another one. This one was really about your amateur career and getting in the magazines, and we have so much more to talk about. But we really covered a lot of bases. So I really do appreciate it.
Thank you.
Of course. And I hope you'll do some more interviews in the future.
I would love to. And just to tell you one more thing about the mindset of the 90s, I'll finish up with this. And, I remember, give you this end with this. And this is the way it was. Bodyworks, Paterson, New Jersey. Go in, work, train. This guy, Harley, was my training partner. And for reasons of my work and his work schedule, we couldn't train together anymore. He becomes Craig Richardson's training partner. And this guy's name is Harley. And we were all tight. We loved each other, but we also hated each other at the same time. So when I would walk into Bodyworks, Harley would scream, "Get the fuck out of our gym. This is our fucking gym. You don't belong here." And then we would just go at it, where we just taunt each other. And if there was an outsider looking in, you'd be like, "These guys are lunatics." And that's the way we rolled. That's the way we did things. We broke each other's balls. We tormented each other. And almost every year, we were the same guys standing in the top 3 at the Nationals.
Yeah.
So
we got to talk more about the 90s on the next one too, because again, the more guys that I talk to from the area, from that era, they further reinforce that's why there's such an obsession with the 90s. But it's almost like, there's two worlds. You got the East Coast, especially that Jersey tri-state area, that's just, blue collar, wake up early, train legs hard. And then, same time over on the West Coast, people see that as more glamorous, maybe a little softer. I don't know. But I don't know if you agree with that or not, but at least that's what I used to read in the magazines. The West Coast was more glamour. East Coast
100%.
was more meat and potatoes.
Yeah, totally.
So
totally.
I definitely thank you for doing this. Please, websites, personal training, sponsors, anything that you'd like to share, please do so.
Big shout out to my current sponsor, G Code Nutrition. And you guys can follow me at Vinny Galanti _, on Instagram, and Vinny Galanti on Facebook.
Awesome. And are you taking clients, personal training, or no?
Absolutely. Yeah, you can message me on my Instagram.
There you go. There you go. And you guys don't have to worry about a peak week. You can eat into the show and do it old school.
Only if you're in shape.
Only if you're in shape. Good disclaimer. Good disclaimer. So thank you very much for IFBB Pro Vinny Galanti. This is Christian Duke, StrengthAddicts.com.
Thanks, guys.